We're going to be looking at 13 sneaky players for Week 13 who could possibly exceed expectations and help us in fantasy football. And these are jabroni players that we're not expecting to do good things. We're not expecting them to be starters. But this is a process where we look at all the matchups and we pick one random player who could really come out of nowhere, score some fantasy points, be that head scratcher, and help us out. So when you're looking at these matchups, just think about how points can be scored and who can be that random guy in that game to score some fantasy points to really make an impact. And not every game's going to have a fantasy contributor come out of nowhere, but we're going to pick one anyway from every game. That being said, if you have questions setting your lineup, drop those in the comments below. I'll get to all of them tonight. And then make sure you hit that subscribe button because you got to stop missing out on those deep waiver wire videos. We pump out multiple waiver wire videos throughout the week, some of them for the top level players, and then we go pretty deep as we get later in the week, and we also help you set lineups, make trades, and everything else. Click that button, stop missing out, win your league, and everything else. Let's start looking at the matchups, though. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Buffalo Bills, 48 over under. So it's kind of high. It's kind of up there. We got a spread of 5. So we might get a little bit of a lead in here where a team has to catch up, mainly the Jaguars. So we're going to get some passing in this game. That's what Vegas is saying. It can't really break too much unless there's turnovers, unless it gets ugly. So I can see it being a high-scoring game. About that, though, I look for Gabe Davis to get some opportunity. And when you're thinking of a sneaky start, a sneaky play, a guy like Gabe Davis is usually in that realm because of the deep balls. The air yards coming his way, 74.5 air yards per game. He has a 30.7% share of the team's passing air yards. So when he gets targets, he gets targeted deep. And if he brings in 1 or 2, he's going to have a splash game. He is like a Will Fuller. He's got that Will Fuller effect where you get a bunch of bust weeks and then you hit on 1 week and it's nuclear, and then a bunch more bust weeks and another nuclear game, and it's on and off like that throughout the season. And you just got to know how to roll with it and know how to play with it. But there's going to be some matches where he hits and some where he doesn't. We can already see it this year where a 21-point week, a 5-point week, and 2 10s and a 15. So he actually has been pretty steady here in production-wise. Why not keep rolling with them? He's getting air yards. This is a good matchup here. Could be a sneaky play. Now we're looking at the Houston Texans at the Atlanta Falcons. They're expecting this to be a lower scoring game, and I can see why. The Falcons like to run the ball. They run some clock. They shave it down. The Texans can push the pace, though. They like to throw the ball. They can throw the ball if they need to, and they will sling it if the mood is right for that. The game script calls for it. So we could hit the over. Vegas is saying it's going to be a low scoring game, but we could see it breaking as well. We could see this being a higher scoring matchup. It could go either way. Thinking of that, though, Kyle Pitts is being slept on. He has not been as productive compared to his draft position as in other years as well. 6 points, 3 points, 8 points, 4 points. But he's still getting 18.3% share of the targets. He's still getting air yards. He's still running a lot of routes. Jonnu Smith, though, stealing some of the love, and that is killing the Pitts value in fantasy football. In Dynasty, you can catch him on the cheap right now. However, we're talking about this week, right now, this moment, and it's very quiet on Kyle Pitts. A lot of people are down on him, and there's a good chance he could exceed expectations in this game if he gets the air yards, gets some targets, as we're seeing that. 4 targets in week 4, 9 targets in week 3, 5 targets in week 2. Pretty steady workload for a tight end. So we could see that this week. Now we're looking at the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers, 38 over under. This is expected to be an ugly game. I expect it to be low scoring, but the odds of it popping off isn't really that good unless the turnovers start burning really bad one way or the other. I think Vegas is pretty tight on this one. I feel good with what Vegas is saying with the 38 over under. That's going to be a lower scoring game. Even if they hit the over, it's not going to be by much. Saying that, we're going with Darnell Washington. Pat Fryermuth's out. Darnell Washington, stud prospect, tremendous size, adjusted athleticism coming out of college. He really shouldn't have fell so far in the draft last year. Had like an injury hiccup, fell in the draft. Really should have been like a second-round pick. Some people were talking him up as a first-round pick coming out for the draft. The Steelers got another discount in the draft, and he's a good prospect. I like to see how many routes he runs in this game. The snaps are starting to increase a little bit. We're starting to see a little bit more opportunities for Washington, as it should be a slow burn for a rookie tight end. But we're looking at him as a sneaky play if he catches a touchdown. He's 6'7", and he runs like he's 230 pounds. So there's a good chance he creates separation and gets a target, but they got to get in the red zone. That's going to be a hard thing for the Steelers. Next, the Saints at the Patriots, 39 over under. The thing about this, the Saints like to push the ball downfield, and the Patriots, if they get pushed, they'll push it as well, but they also want to keep it slow. That's where they want to be. That's how they identify, but they will run them streets if they need to throw the ball. They will do that. However, Vegas might be right on the point total since the Saints are on the road to New England, but also this game could break. I sound like I'm in the middle, but I'm also telling you both ways. Both ways could happen in this one. That being said, Rashid Shaheed, because it's air yard city with this dude, he's getting 80.5 air yards a game, almost 5 targets a game, so the workload's all right. The workload's low enough to keep him from being a must start, a must play every week, but it's high enough to keep you intrigued, especially for daily fantasy, DraftKings, and everything else like that. FanDuel, he's a guy you're looking at every so often because the price tag's cheap and the air yards are high, which means if you bring in 1 ball or 2 balls, you can have a big game. Last week he had 7 targets. Week 1 he had 6 targets. So there are some matchups where things break free. He gets more targets, especially if we get a progression funnel where the number 1, number 2 wide receivers here are really locked down on some plays and some targets go to him and he's getting those deep targets because he's running it deep. A guy you want to look at as a sneaky play this week. Now we're looking at the Carolina Panthers at the Detroit Lions, and we got a 44 over under, but a big spread. Detroit's expected to win big. That being said, the Panthers might be in catch-up mode. They might be scoring fantasy points on the back end of this game, and Detroit can really smoke in fantasy points, whether they're scoring points or not in actual football. That's a good thing to see. That being said, we are looking at Jameson Williams. Amon-Ra's doubtful. He might be in. He might be in because he's got that dog in him. But it's deep ball city with this guy. Again, the theme here is we're chasing air yards. We're chasing air yards. And he may get a ramp up here where he does not play many snaps, see many routes, see many opportunities because Detroit does not do the sexy thing. Think about Jahmyr Gibbs. Think about Jameson Williams' slow ramp up last year. We might get a slow ramp up this year. But he's not coming back from that devastating injury. But it could still happen because that's what Detroit does. Deep ball city, though, because he's going to be running 9 routes and wind sprints out there. If a couple targets goes his way, he brings them in. You might get a splash game. Now we're looking at the Giants at the Miami Dolphins. 48.5 over under. The Dolphins can do whatever they want in this game. They can do whatever they want offensively. The Giants can't do anything about it. The Giants might be able to do something on the back end. Maybe, but you're starting Dolphins. That being said, nobody's sneaky on the Dolphins, so look at Wan'Dale Robinson because he's getting targets, 17.2% target share, and we're doing that on a ramp up. Remember, coming back from that knee injury, a ramp up in that first game against the Niners, more opportunity the next game against Seattle, so we're starting to run more routes, we're seeing more snaps, we're seeing more opportunity, and he flashed last season as a rookie, looked good at Kentucky, was very productive. This is a wide receiver that you put in the slot that can also stretch the field a little bit and make those deep plays. He's a player that has rapport with Danny Dimes. Danny Dimes likes to look his way. Even though he's only running a few routes a game, he's still getting some targets here, which is a good indicator. Once he gets a full workload, full opportunity to run a lot of routes, you're going to see him get some opportunity to score some points. Now we're looking at Tennessee Titans at the Colts, 43 over under. It's expected to be a slower game. It is, and I can see why, because the Titans are a little bit slower. The Colts can run some clock here because they can run the ball. They got a running quarterback, which means the clock will eat a little bit. 43 over under. I feel Vegas is pretty tight on this, and I feel like you can't put it under the 40s because the Colts can put up points, and the Titans can a little bit. They can get you 20 to 30, so that's something to look at. And thinking about that, someone's got to score fantasy points in this matchup, but we got to find a jabroni. We got to find a jabroni. And I got a jabroni here that is a jabroni that can do jabroni things, and that's Alec Pierce because it's deep ball city. He has an 8 out of 17. 17 yards per target, almost 18. 3.5 targets per game. and he's soaking up air yards. And he's a guy that can create the splash play on any given moment and be productive in any game because of the splash plays. He's a splash play guy. We saw that last year. He had a couple games where we had to look at him on the waiver wire because he was getting those deep targets. Anthony Richardson can throw the moon ball, and if we get in that opportunity in that spot, considering this is going to be a pass funnel game because the Titans can stifle the run game, and they're kind of tight against the pass as well, we might see some rockets going to Alec Pierce. Now we're looking at the Bengals at the Cardinals. 44.5 over-under in this one. Kind of a tighter over-under here as it's not super high, not super low. Kind of middle of the road, but kind of low as well. The spread's kind of tight. Cardinals are kind of tricky here. This is a matchup that I'm expecting it to be a little bit lower scoring, but I expect some producers, mostly the top guys. It's really hard to find a jabroni here that's going to hit. But thinking outside the box a little bit, T. Higgins with the ribs, Tyler Boyd getting more opportunity here. Tyler Boyd has a history of scoring more fantasy points when Higgins is on the mend, and he's getting 6.8 targets per game, almost a 20% target share. He's getting opportunity, and he's scoring this year. He has 11 points in week 2, 8 and 3, 6 last week, 3 to start out the season, but he's getting workload, he's getting opportunity. This is a matchup that's a little funky where he might get a progression funnel. Where Burrow is going through his progressions, he's got to go to his next guy. Next guy could be Tyler Boyd. He gets a couple extra targets. That's something we might be able to look at in this game. Now we're looking at the Eagles at the Rams, 49.5 over-under. My guess, my gut is saying this game's going to break. The Rams want to push the pace. They started out the season in the first 2 games with over 80 plays per game. That's dialed back to like 72 plays per game. You can throw in Philly a little bit, and Philly can push the pace as well, especially if they push you, and they're on the road to LA. So that means there's going to be a little bit of a boost for the Rams here. We got the spread kind of tight here. So this could be a fun game to watch for real football and could be also great for fantasy. That being said, Tutu Atwell. Everyone's looking at Cooper Kupp versus Puka Nacua, and I think both players have a good chance of scoring fantasy points here. Tutu Atwell has a different dynamic. He's got the speed. He can get you some yak. He could be getting some targets. Also, Puka, Cooper, they're going to be looked at in coverage. That should break out Atwell in some moments here, giving some opportunity. He's getting a 21.9% target share. That should dial back naturally, I guess. Maybe like 15, 16, 17%. But again, that speed, that downfield ability, the yak ability, that plays in favor for big games, big moments, big opportunities, making him a sneaky option. Chiefs at the Vikings should be a fun matchup here with a 53 over-under. We want to see how the Vikings can run with the Chiefs here. The Vikings run a lot of plays, 7th or 6th in plays ran per game, 4th last year, and you can scream deep balls on this team. You can pass on this team, and that's going to push the Vikings to throw the ball. The Chiefs know they can throw deep balls on this team, and teams could do that last year as well. That being said, Justin Watson, deep ball city, and he's a guy you need to think about a lot when you're setting FanDuel lineups, when you're setting DraftKings lineups in huge tournaments, because in any given week, he can really go off on you. He's playing 44.4 snaps a game. He led all wide receivers in snaps last week. A 21.2 average depth of target, and that's why we're looking at him. He gets the deep balls. He just runs wind sprints, and if he gets a couple targets, he gets that opportunity. You know what? That's a splash game. He will have a splash game this year, maybe 2 or 3. And those moments, you're not going to know when it happens because you can't play the matchup on that because he's just running deep. Ball comes his way. If it's catchable, he brings it in. That's a huge moment. If he brings in 2, that's even bigger game. That's even more production. Justin Watson could be doing that in this week because that matchup indicates, hey, we can break this team here, going deep on them a little bit. We got Justin Watson with his 4.3 speed here, running the wind sprints, breaking them DBs. Now we got the Jets, the Broncos here. Should be an ugly one. 43.5 over-under. I'm expecting the Jets to roll here in an ugly fashion, and the Broncos trying to stick with them. That being said, Dalvin Cook, he looks cooked. And I know, because this is a jabroni video, not a must-start video, not guys that we're supposed to start, but guys who are supposed to sneak up on us, and we're trying to think outside the box here. The Broncos allow 35.6 points a game to running backs right now. They are getting ran on like crazy Breece Hall should be able to do it. Dalvin Cook might get some opportunities. He might get that end zone play. He's been faded. That makes him sneaky or even sneakier. He's been dropped in a lot of leagues, but that doesn't mean you should be picking him up either. We got to pick a jabroni in every game. I don't want to pick a jabroni from this game, but I have to. I have to because that's the rules. Now it's Cowboys at the Niners. This one should be a fun one. I'm excited to watch this one. This could be a defensive battle. This could be an ugly, high-scoring game. It could be either way, and we don't know till we get there. But that being said, Michael Gallup's heating it up with targets. He's got 7 targets in Week 3, 6 targets last week, and this could be a progression funnel as Dak Prescott's got to sit there in the pocket, look at Lamb, see him covered, and work his way down through his progressions, which means Michael Gallup could get a couple extra targets here and there, maybe an extra 2. Maybe an extra 2, and that could be enough for him to catch a couple balls, maybe one in the end zone, maybe something sneaky, and he becomes a sneaky play for us in fantasy football. Now we're looking at the Packers at the Raiders here. Could be a higher scoring game, 45 over under. It's in the middle of the road. Vegas is saying, hey, we don't know. We don't know. Because if we thought it was a lower scoring game, it'd be like 42, 43, 38, 39 like the other games. And if we thought it was higher scoring, it'd be pushing 50. It's right there in the middle. It could go either way. That's what that number tells us here. But people are going to be scoring fantasy points in this game, and the ball is going to be moving here. That's what I'm expecting. Someone's going to sneak up on us. Why not Christian Watson here? As people have been sleeping on him a little bit because he's been out a lot of the season here, especially in basic redraft. Basic redraft, yes. Hardcore redraft, no. Hardcore best ball, no. Dynasty, no. But he should be getting more snaps this week. That's been the news. More snaps, more opportunities, more time to score fantasy points. But those are 13 sneaky plays that we're looking at for week 5 that could do something for us in fantasy. These are really cheap guys, or most of them are cheap guys, that we can add in DFS, FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever you play, and make those bets so you can add in higher priced players into your lineup. That's the big thing about this video. And then if you're in deeper leagues, or if you're hurting, you're a winless team, 1-win team, and you're trying to scratch off for a player for your lineup, you're looking at waivers or gotten back into your bench, this kind of helps you out think through the process, not just these players, but other ancillary wide receivers, backup running backs who could be getting opportunity in these matchups. Think about how some of these games could break and how some of these players could score fantasy points off that break, and then make the bet on that and see what happens, because we're just gambling anyways. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to hear about it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. Catch you on the next video.